Okay, so today we've talked a lot about what Alibaba Cloud is doing with AI and machine learning, what our capabilities are. But in a concrete sense, if you wanted to get your hands dirty and build something, what would that look like? Well, that's the purpose of this demo. So I want to show you Alibaba Cloud's data visualization capabilities. I want to show you how you can build all kinds of cool charts and graphs and maps using Alibaba Cloud's DataV, which is a data visualization tool. So I'm here in the Alibaba Cloud console on the home page. This is my test account. What I'm going to do first is go over to RDS, which is our relational database service. So what I've done is I've set up an RDS database in the US West region, so that would be Silicon Valley. And on this database, I have set up some fake coronavirus data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take data about places that people stayed or visited, and I'm going to map that data onto an actual map. And this data is all imaginary. These aren't real patients. So what I've done is I've set up imaginary coronavirus data for Malaysia. I've put it into this database, and then I'm going to try to map it using DataV. So let's first log into the database and take a look at what this data is, what it looks like. So the first thing I need to do is put in my username and password. So give me a second to do that. Okay, so I've put my username and password in. I can now log on to this database. That will take just a second. We just need to wait for the console to load up. And then once it's loaded up, we can explore the data that I've placed in here. So I've got this database called COVID data that's running on this RDS server. And inside this database, there are three tables: COVID-19 full, COVID-19 stayed, and COVID-19 visited. The full table, let me show you that. You can left click on it and then choose Open Table, and then you'll be able to view and edit the table inside DMS, which is our database management tool. So the full table contains infection dates, ID numbers, ages, genders, origin and nationality, and places stayed for a variety of different imaginary people in Malaysia. The stayed table lists the places that people stayed at, so the addresses they stayed at in Malaysia. So here are the addresses, again, the date the person was infected, their nationality, and we now add a latitude and longitude so that we can plot this on a map. And then we say infected or imported. So infected means people in this imaginary data set that were infected locally in Malaysia, and imported means people that brought coronavirus with them into Malaysia. And again, entirely imaginary data, but it will look cool on the graph, which is the important thing. So the visited table is a list of places that were visited by anyone who was infected. And again, that's place name, ID, latitude and longitude, nationality, just as we had in the other two tables. So how am I going to take this data and plot it? How can I make a cool looking graph based on this data? Well, that's where DataV comes in. So I'm going to leave the RDS console now. We're done with RDS, and I'm going to go over to DataV. DataV is our plotting tool. So I'll leave the RDS console and I'll go over to the US West version of DataV, click on Use, and that will go ahead and open up the DataV console. And once the DataV console is open, I need to explain to you what each component in the console does. So widgets is a place where you can deploy like custom maps and charts, basically mini applications inside DataV that will help you visualize your data. We won't need to use that today. That is, in fact, a very advanced feature. Then there's data sources. This is where the data is going to come from that drives your projects, that drives your dashboards. And you can add all kinds of sources. I have added my MySQL database. If you click on this edit button, this pencil, you can see all the connection details for that database. And if I wanted, I could add another data source. And we support quite a few different data sources. You can pull data from other Alibaba Cloud services as well as databases located in other places. It doesn't have to be, the data doesn't have to come from Alibaba Cloud. You can fetch it from somewhere else. Okay, and then the last tab is the Projects tab. This is where you go to actually create a data dashboard. And the cool thing is, once you've created a dashboard in here, you can set up a link that allows you to share that dashboard with other people. And what I'm hoping to do is, once I've taken you through the steps of creating this dashboard, I will share the link with you in the Ding Talk group, and then you can go have a look at this dashboard and play around with it a little bit. So I'm going to click on Create Project, And then that will take us over to the dashboard selection screen. So there's a few different ways to do this. The base, the bottom layer of the data dashboard is called the canvas. You can use an empty canvas if you want. You can create a completely customized data display board in DataV. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and choose this coronavirus-19 dashboard. There's already a template for plotting coronavirus data. And I will click on Create Project, and I'll call it COVID-19 Tracker, and then I will just click Create, and that will go ahead and create our new dashboard for us. So once the dashboard is created, we'll need to set up some data sources to enter the data into the dashboard. So right now the dashboard only has static data. It's not actually pulling its data from a database. And that's actually one of the coolest things about DataV. It can pull data from a database or a data source, say once every minute or once every 5 minutes, so that the dashboard can update in near real time. It doesn't have to always display the same thing. You can have it update. So here's the mock-up dashboard. This is the dashboard that doesn't have our real data in it yet. Let's go ahead and start playing with this a little bit. So the first thing that you'll notice is that this dashboard is showing a map of Singapore. That's not what we want. I actually want to show a map of Kuala Lumpur. And I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I've never been to the city, so I'm not clear on that part. So anyway, I'm going to show a map of KL. I'll call it KL so that I don't embarrass myself. We want to switch from Singapore to KL, so the first thing I'll do in the dashboard is I'll click on the map. And that will bring up a menu over here on the right-hand side, which has 3 tabs. So the tab on the left here is the general settings for each component in your data dashboard. This tab here in the middle is the data source, where the data comes from that drives that component. And then this one is actions. So you can make it so that something happens when you click on each element in your dashboard. We won't be doing that today. We'll only be using the first 2 tabs. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go down here toward the bottom where it says Global Style. And I want to click on that because that is where I can go to adjust the map center point and zoom. Because I want to go ahead and display KL instead of Singapore. So I need to change the longitude to about 101.7. And I think the latitude should be 3.1. Let's go ahead and try that out and see what happens. There we go. Yeah, that looks about right. There is the international airport. Okay, so our map is now displaying correctly. We can also adjust the zoom a little bit. Like I might want to zoom out a little bit. So let's do that. We'll zoom out a little bit. We'll set the zoom level to 12. And you'll have to wait a minute for the map components to refresh. When you're editing a DataV dashboard, it's actually very resource intensive. So it's usually a good idea if you close any unnecessary tabs in Chrome. So I've just got the 1 tab open now. Okay, so great. Here is KL. And you'll notice nothing is showing up on the map right now because we haven't actually set up any data sources. So let's do that part. That's important. So I'll click again on the map, and you can see that there's a few different options here. These are the components that make up the map. So for instance, there's this flying layer. So this is actually we will use this to draw little flying lines on top of the map that go from locations where infected people are staying or living to locations that they visited. And to do that, we need to click on that data source tab I talked about earlier. So we'll do that. And you can see there's a section at the bottom called data source, and it's set to static, right? So right now it's just this JSON table that lists the from and to latitude and longitude pairs. We want to actually change that so that it pulls from our MySQL database. So I'll change the data source type over to database. And you can see there's quite a few options in here. We'll just be using database today. And then I need to select which database. And then I need to replace this query here with a query that will concatenate the stayed and visited tables together. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to try to type this in by hand. Select concat t1.lng, a comma, t1.lat, and then as from, that will be the from address. And then concat t2.lng These are just the latitude and longitude pairs from that database table that we're selecting. t2.lat, again, okay, and then I need to say where I'm getting the data from, or actually as to, I need to say that'll be the to field, and then we'll say from COVID-19 stayed, which is the table that contains the locations people stayed, to T1, and then we'll say join with COVID-19 visited, T2 on T1.id equals T2.id. So what we're going to do is for each entry in the stayed table, we'll map it, we'll join it with the entry in the visited table. So that way we're making sure we're corresponding the same people. The ID numbers in those two tables correspond to the same individual. So if there's a person whose ID 112 in the stayed table, which lists where that person's staying, then that person will also be ID 112 in the visited table. So if the IDs match, then we can guarantee that each line we're drawing goes from where person A stayed to where person A visited. And then that should complete the query. So now that we've put that in, if everything works, we can click in this data response result and it will generate a mapping of all of those individuals. Oops, actually it appears that I made a typo. So let me go back and fix that. So let me just double check my SQL code here. Q1.lng, concatenated on the comma with latitude as the from with a comma. Okay, concat on, oh, yeah, that's what it is, concact. My bad. So you can see I've actually made a typo in here. You have to be super careful when you're writing SQL statements not to make any typos. As to, okay, from COVID-19, okay, that should fix it. Let's see if that does the trick. If that doesn't do the trick, then I'm going to have to copy and paste this in. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to have to copy and paste in the command that I saved, so give me a moment to do that, because if it's a longer SQL command, I do recommend that you write it down rather than trying to type it in by hand like I just did, because if you make a mistake, it can be hard to fix. So let's just go ahead and replace that command. Okay, so I've gone ahead and fixed it by copy-pasting in the saved command from my database terminal, and now you can see there are all these little tiny flying lines on the map going from where people stayed to where they visited. Cool, so that worked. All right, cool. So now we can close that window, and we need to basically draw some diamonds or dots on the map that correspond to where people are staying. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll close that. There's a few other layers on here. You can see that there's a bubble layer, a tile layer, and then there's these two scatter layers. These, I believe, are the ones that we want to edit to show where people are traveling to and from. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. Yes, these orange points should correspond to where people visited. So I'll go to, okay, let's go ahead to, actually, you know, we won't add any of those. Let's just add the points where people stayed. So we want the second scatter layer here, and you can rename these so that they have clearer names. For instance, I could rename this layer scatter to be confirmed infected, right? Oops, I missed the D on the end of infected. Oops. Okay, there we go. So I can change that to confirmed infected, and then I could make this flying lines be something like, let's change that to places visited. Okay, great. So now I've got my places visited and the number of confirmed infected. Whoops, let me click on the map background again. So I'll go down to confirmed infected, I'll click on that, and then you can see I can again change the data source from static to something else by clicking on set. So we'll go ahead and do that. I will change the data source to database once again, and then we'll put in a SQL query that will pull data from the stayed table. We want the latitude and longitude pairs so we can draw a dot where all the sick people are staying. So let's see, the confirmed cases should be select, whoops, you do need to spell things right, very important in SQL. So let's go ahead and spell that command correctly, select. We'll concatenate using a hash sign on the ID as info, longitude, latitude from COVID data, which is the name of my database. I need a hyphen in there because my database name is COVID-data. Oops. Excuse me a moment. Chrome is a little bit slow. DataV is very resource intensive, so you need to make sure you've got other stuff closed or it won't run very well. Also the database and table name should be surrounded by backticks. Make sure that those are backticks and not quote marks. And then we want our table to be the table listing where everybody stayed. Great. Where, type, and let's choose to only look at people who were infected locally. Let's go ahead and do that. And then I should be able to, again, scroll down to the data response result box, click in there, and if there's no problems with the SQL query, then everything should work. Oops. Looks like I again have a slight mistake in here. Actually, you should be able to leave this part out. Oh, I see what the problem is. We didn't select the data source. You have to select the actual database you're fetching the data from. So now I'll click in the data response result box, and then we'll wait a moment for the data to load up. Oops, type should be in backticks, not quotes. My bad, I'm sorry. Having a little bit of trouble with my SQL today. All right, there we go. So type is now in backticks. And there you go. We now have ID numbers for each person and also longitude and latitude. And if we wanted, instead of using their ID number, we could do something else in here like their nationality, right? So we have nationality, I believe, as a field in the stayed table. So I could actually change it so that the results display their nationality in the info field. Yeah, there we go. So we can see where these people came from, or actually where they're originally from, right? So if we change this to imported, then we'll get a list of people who brought it into the country. So this would be the people who got sick outside of Malaysia and then brought the COVID-19 with them into the country. Let's go ahead and change that. And then we'll see what those people's nationalities are, and then the flying lines will indicate where they visited. Okay, great. So it looks like the dashboard is working. So in order to save a little bit of time, I'm going to eliminate some other components that are displayed on this dashboard. We won't leave in any of this information about the legend or total infected or confirmed cases. We'll take all that out, which means we need to remove most of this content here. So I will shift click up to here, and then I will right click, and I will go ahead and choose delete. And so how cool is this, right? So we're actually making a real-time data dashboard that can update once a minute, showing us all of this data about infections. That's pretty cool. All right, so let's go ahead and finish deleting the last of these unneeded boxes. Again, I'll shift click to select a group of them all at once. Right click on delete. Okay. We can leave the timer. We can get rid of most of this again. Delete. Sorry, there are a lot of elements in the default chart that we're not actually going to use for the demo today, so we do have to spend some time to remove those. Okay. We can get rid of this carousel table on the right-hand side. And you can feel free to add or remove any elements you think help with the visual display of the information. That's one of the cool things about the dashboard building functionality in DataV, is that you can build practically anything, really. It's a very flexible system. That's one of the things that I love the most about it, is the fact that it's so flexible. You can build so much in here. Very, very easily and very quickly, like we're doing right now, actually. So let me delete that. And once this is all deleted, I'm going to go ahead and publish this dashboard so that you can look at it yourselves, because I can make this available directly over the internet. So there's a few more things I can get rid of here. And then once the dashboard's exactly the way I want it, I'll show you how to publish it. All right, so I now have the map layer, the timer showing the current date and time, and 3 of the main title boxes I've decided to leave in place here. Cool, so that's all done. So now that I'm done editing my dashboard, how do I make it available for display? How do I make it so you can go look at this dashboard? Well, I hit this little publish button here, and I click on Publish Project, which will make this project public. So create and publish, and I'll make it available. Oops, I'll make it available so that it can be viewed by anyone. And then I'll go ahead and copy paste this link into the group. But before I do that, let me show you what it looks like. So I'll actually go ahead and close the editor window because it uses a lot of resources, and we'll just look at the dashboard itself. And sure enough, here it is. You can see the places that sick people are staying. These are the imported cases only, so people that came in from outside. And you can see the little flying line showing where they visited. And you can click on a dot, and it will show you the nationality of the person staying at that location. And then you can see the little disclaimer, all data shown is mock-up data, meaning it's not real. So the dashboard is complete. So feel free to go ahead and check that out.